I've always been obsessive about locking my doors. Even as a kid, it was something I did. And as a teenager, I learned through experience that a locked door can make all the difference. It might not stop someone determined to get in, but it at least gives you some sort of warning. It's a habit everyone who knows me is aware of. At social gatherings, I'll lock doors behind me without even thinking, and I always hear someone ask, "Who the hell locked it?" Then I get that rush of embarrassment because, of course, it was me. I've done nightly lock checks for over a decade, and I don't think I can sleep without doing them. I only mention all of this because it explains how strange this situation has been for me. I moved here about 5 months ago from a much more populated part of my state. The house that I'm in sits far back from any paved road. 2 dirt roads and 2 private driveways separate me from civilization. My rental sits off to the side of another person's property, down their private drive, then onto my own. I've never seen a pedestrian out here. It's peaceful, secluded, and private. I think it's pretty hard to find even with a GPS. Most maps place it a few fields south of where it actually is. For someone like me who values privacy and hates unannounced visitors, it's perfect. The house is partly surrounded by trees and brush, with an open field on the other sides. It took time to adjust to the rural quiet. Sounds of coyotes, the occasional cow screaming at night, the pitch-black darkness without any light pollution. But I got used to it. The nearest town is more than 20 miles away. Another quirk about me, I never sleep in a completely dark house. I always leave at least one light on in a common area, usually just one, but some sort of nightlight. My back door opens towards the trees, but it never felt particularly spooky. A few yards into the tree line, there's a 6-foot wire fence covered in vines, adding another layer of privacy. No one ever uses our back door. There's not really a reason to. A month after moving in, I accidentally locked myself out. I have this habit of locking the handle out of reflex, sometimes before I even realize whether I have my keys on me. I knew I'd only lock the handle, so I figured I could just pop it open. When I inspected it, though, the door was pristine. It looked like a brand new door, no marks or scratches on it, and I didn't want to damage anything, so I swallowed my pride and called my landlord to let me back in. I promised myself that I'd just be more careful. About a week later, I woke up in the middle of the night thirsty. I got out of bed and opened my bedroom door, and I instantly noticed that something was wrong. It was way too dark in the house. The light that I always leave on was off. I wondered if maybe the power had gone out, but I could still hear my fan running behind me, so no, it wasn't that. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, that's when I felt it. That prickling feeling on the back of my neck. The unmistakable sensation that I was being watched. One more step forward and it wasn't a feeling anymore. I was certain of it. I turned toward where I thought the source was, half expecting to see someone standing there. But instead, I saw stars. My back door was wide open. 2 quick steps backward, out of view, and now my pulse was racing. But my boys were asleep in the next room, and I couldn't just hide. So I stepped forward again, with every instinct screaming that someone was out there, just waiting for me. I reached toward the door, every nerve of mine braced for the touch of someone's hand. After a few seconds of fumbling, my fingers found the doorknob, and I slammed it shut. When I went to lock it, I realized that the deadbolt was still engaged. Maybe I thought that the latch just hadn't caught properly. That's possible. The light being off, that remained a mystery to me. My boys swore that they hadn't touched it, and I believed them. They like having the light on, especially at night. So I wrote it off as strange, in a way that I just couldn't explain it. From then on, every time I locked that door, I leaned my entire weight against it. Life went on after that night, and I tried to forget about it, until almost 3 weeks later. It started out the same way again. I woke up in the middle of the night, this time not due to thirst, a nightmare. I rarely dream, but sometimes I'll have these clusters of night terrors. I woke up gasping, mouth dry, heart pounding. After using the bathroom, I walked into the kitchen and there it was again. That same darkness, along with that same feeling of being watched. Again, the back door was wide open. I froze, then retreated a few steps, only to force myself forward again. I shut the door, convinced that someone was going to grab me, but of course that didn't happen. When I checked it that morning, there were scratches and small dents around the lock. It was clear that someone had been trying to pry it open. I told myself that at the very least, it proved that it wasn't anything supernatural. But still, I didn't know exactly what to do then. 2 weeks later, I was half awake all night because the chickens out back were going nuts. That doesn't happen often, but when it does, it is insufferable. At around 2 a.m., my fan stopped. Power outage. I got up to light a few candles in the kitchen so nobody would stumble around in the dark. 2 steps in, and I knew before I'd even turned my head. That door was wide open again. I could hear the crickets outside, and they were far too clear for there to be a layer of wood between me and them. I shut the door again, heart racing, and I noticed even more damage around the lock. This wasn't in my head. This had never once happened during the day, only at night. I kept thinking about that, replaying it over and over. I remembered just how pristine the front and back doors were when I'd locked myself out that first month. It was obvious that someone was coming into our house, and they kept coming back. I decided then to swap the locks. The front door had a heavy square deadbolt, while the back door had a sloped one that looked like it had been installed backwards. I was going to fix it the next day. That night, though, I couldn't find my screwdriver, so I hung a Christmas decoration with little bells on the back door handle, almost as a makeshift alarm. The door being open had never happened 2 nights in a row, I told myself. I even thought about setting up a camera, but honestly, I was a bit scared of what it might catch. For once, I went to bed early. I fell asleep fast, and then the nightmares came on. I woke up first around midnight. Kitchen light off, back door open. I shut it, locked it, went back to bed. I woke up again at 1:30 and the same thing. Door open again. Woke up at 3. Door was closed this time. Thank God. I fell back asleep, straight into another nightmare. Now, in this dream, I could hear Christmas bells. I walked into a dark room where a little girl stood facing away from me. At first, I wasn't afraid. I asked her name. She didn't answer directly. She started chanting, "Someone's coming. Someone's coming." Her voice grew louder and louder, rising with every repetition. The bells just kept ringing in the background. Finally, she turned around, her jaw hung open unnaturally wide, her mouth stretching down to her chest, and she screamed, "Someone's here." I woke up instantly. Dawn was just starting to break through my window, and my first thought, of course, was the door. Sure enough, the kitchen was dark and the door was wide open again. But this time I didn't feel that same sense of danger. It felt like whatever it was had passed. And that's when I saw the Christmas bells. No longer on the doorknob, but sitting neatly on top of the dryer a few steps away. The next morning, I asked my boys if they'd heard anything during the night. My 13-year-old said no at first, then added, "Actually, I got up at about 2:30 to pee. The back door was open, so I shut it." I asked about the bells, and he said that he was pretty sure they were still hanging on the handle when he went to bed. That same day, I finally got around to switching the locks. A few days later, I noticed that there were more scratches, fresh ones. But so far, the new lock is held. For now, at least. Update. For those of you out there wanting a little bit more information about what's going on. It's been quiet here since we changed the locks. We hung up an outdoor security camera. It's not higher end, so it doesn't have audio, but the video works just fine. I haven't happened to notice any new scratches on the door. We're coming up on 2 weeks since the last incident, which has always been the usual interval between these openings. So I'm staying cautious. The camera stays on, and if our nighttime visitor shows up again, we'll finally be able to see them, assuming they don't dart off the second the door opens, or bust out our new outdoor light. For now, that's all I can really report. There's no answers and no real peace of mind over here, just quiet. And in a place like this, I'm still not sure whether that's comforting or not. I'm going to share the story of how I dated, and fell in love with a sociopath. This is a hard story for me to tell, so please bear with me. I'm hoping that by sharing it, it'll help myself heal, and maybe some other victims too. You guys were not alone. The night that we met, this was supposed to be the night that I took my life. It was a cool fall evening, just warm enough for a light jacket. I was at a horse sale that I went to every month. Per usual, my friend and I checked out the tack lots and horses that were up for auction. Throughout the past few months, I had dealt with a lot of pain and hardship. My heart was as broken as it could be. All of my passion for the things that I once enjoyed was gone. The girl that I once knew wasn't there anymore. I walked that long, dark road of depression. I had no self-esteem anymore. I felt I was worth nothing. I planned on ending it all after the sale. I was watching horses in the outdoor ring when one caught my eye. My friend was looking for a horse, and it seemed like it might be a match for her. I slipped into the ring to talk to the owner. When he turned around and looked at me, it was as if the world stopped turning. The horses around me were in slow motion. Our eyes met and every bone in my body just went cold. I asked to try the horse out and he let me. Fast forward, my friend bought the horse. In the end, the horse didn't work out, but that's another story for another time. The owner was supposed to deliver the horse to them the next day. I didn't catch his name, and for whatever reason, I couldn't move forward with my plan that night. I laid in bed, but I couldn't sleep. Although the fact was, I was still here, and I had to find out who that guy was. The next day, I was out fishing on a river with my brother when my friend texted me the owner of that horse's name. Matt. She had written a check out to him, so it all worked out. It wasn't long before I had found him on Facebook, and it wasn't long before he messaged me, asking me out on a date. I don't think I'll ever forget that day. I spent the next week or so house-sitting for an old high school friend. I invited him over for dinner towards the end of the week. I'd never been so nervous in my life. I honestly can tell you I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I made shrimp pasta and vodka sauce that night. We clicked. He ended up letting me take his truck out for a spin. When we got back to the house, we were sitting in the dark talking when he pulled me in for our first kiss. My heart just melted. I remember my eyes filling with tears because it all just felt so right. I swore for so long that it was right. He stayed with me until about 5 a.m. The guy was allergic to cats, otherwise he would have just stayed the entire night. The next few months seemed to be pure bliss. Everything was amazing. The money that he blew on spoiling me was just crazy. I got everything that I could have ever wanted. His family was loaded and he wasn't exactly afraid to show it. It wasn't until the honeymoon phase was over that I started noticing things. An ex-girlfriend repeatedly texted him and told him that he had given her chlamydia. He then gave it to me. In his eyes, I was never skinny enough. My hair was never the right color. I didn't have tattoos and I only had a few piercings. I was a waitress, I drove a truck, I posted too many selfies. He said that I texted him too much, that I wasn't able to satisfy him anymore. He began dropping me off at the gym to work out while he ran errands just about every day of the week. Matt became even more obsessed with porn than normal. A Tumblr blog, the whole 9 yards. He killed off all my hopes and dreams, one by one. If we were to be together, I could never ride racehorses for a living like I had wanted to my whole life. He started spending hours on end playing video games when I came over. He had used me for what he needed and he was done with me. He taught himself how to build computers. He started putting together guns in his basement and fabricating 3D parts for them. This should have been a red flag. About a month went by of him ignoring me. When he was talking to me, he'd tell me that I wasn't enough. And he'd show me pictures and videos of all the girls that he wanted. He told me that my family hated me. Everyone did. I became depressed again. I started working more and more hours just to keep myself away from thinking. One night, I finally had a full-on mental breakdown. I told him about the night we met, what I was supposed to have done that night, how I feel like he saved me and how much I loved him. His answer? He left me. The next morning, he woke up and texted me saying that he had no feelings for me and I could come get my things when I wanted. My world fell apart around me. I lost 25 pounds because I don't think that I ate for weeks. My parents became concerned for me and didn't let me close my door. My dad got me a job riding racehorses, and around then things started to look up. About a month later, I landed myself in the ICU with a severe concussion. When I woke up, I thought Matt and I were still together. I got on my phone to tell him I was hurt when I saw the messages from the breakup, and it caused me to fall apart all over again. An entire year passed. I remained single. Matt had a few girlfriends. I knew this from his social media pages. Somehow, I managed to keep myself together. At least, that's what I made it look like. I worked myself to death, bought a new car, and moved out at 20. I worked 2 jobs and about 75 hours a week. I kept myself busy. I had a personal cocktail of Adderall, alcohol, and weed that helped me keep myself afloat. I'll be the first to admit that the drinking did start to get a bit out of hand. I was at my parents' visiting when I got a friend request from Matt on Facebook. I must have refreshed the page 10 times. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Despite my better interest, I accepted it. He messaged me a little while later. He had made it through the police department and was now a county sheriff. He gave me a pretty lame apology, but I accepted it nonetheless. I knew in my heart that I wasn't over him. He took me to dinner that night and spent the night at my apartment. He actually made some good points about why he ended it with me. I started to forgive him. I shed a lot of tears that night. We started hanging out like old times again, but the same problems started to come up. Once again, I wasn't good enough, but there was something different about him this time. He had become obsessed with picking locks. We'd be laying in bed watching a movie and he'd be on his phone watching lock-picking videos. He complained about my dog a lot. He always joked that he'd go missing one day. A few more weeks went by and it seemed like every once in a while his mask would vanish, but just for a second. I should have known that something was off when he sent me a text complaining about somebody dying in his arms at work. The body stunk, he said. He started driving like a nut. I vividly remember us going 116 miles per hour on a back road in his Mustang. He watched my reactions the entire time, hardly looking at the road. We went to New York for a couple of days, and he brought a gun with him into the One World Trade Center, promptly getting us kicked out. We got into a fight over the phone one night because he called me an explicit name. The next day we met up to talk about it. During my drive to the meeting place, I was overwhelmed with this feeling of dread. I knew that it was the end of us, but it was much more than that. I wasn't sad, I was frustrated. We talked for about 20 minutes, and I don't think his eyes ever wandered from my face. He was staring right through me, basically. His 2 dark brown eyes shot through me like bullets. He started speaking to me through gritted teeth, telling me that no one would ever love me, that he was in cahoots with my friends and they all hated me too, how I was going nowhere in life. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. His eyes were completely dead. That's an image that I don't think I can ever unsee. The way he was looking at me gave me chills throughout my body. That's when the voice in my head started talking. Steph, get out of the car and get out now. Whether that was my brain or my gut, I don't know, but I got out. I hurried to my car, jumped in, and immediately locked the doors. I saw him staring at me through my rearview mirror, and I drove straight to my parents' house bawling. They were terrified on my behalf. The next day, my boss told me that Matt had apparently been driving back and forth past my job, going outrageous speeds, almost as if he was trying to show off. But the fact was that he lived almost an hour from there and had no reason to be at my place of business. I reported him to his precinct, who said that they would take care of it. And me having full faith in that statement, I guess they did. I didn't hear from Matt for a very long time. I started to move on in my life and feel like I was once again myself. Finally. I started dating my current boyfriend, who, for the record, is the best and the most loving man I've ever met in my life. Matt drunk texted me one night, though. I told him to leave me alone. I had since moved an hour away since we broke up, and I had only then started to feel safe again. Well, tonight, my boyfriend was on his way over when he called me to tell me that someone had been tailgating him for almost 30 miles. I don't have any evidence to prove this, but in my heart of hearts, I know that was mad. Whether it was or it wasn't, the driver of a car turned down another road about a half-mile from my house. Really settling to know that if it was my ex, he likely knows my exact address. And that's something that I have no clue what to do about. This happened to me a couple of months back now, but when it first happened, given how crazy it was, it took me a few weeks to collect myself enough to really come to grips with the fact that it even happened to me. It's relevant for me to tell you up front that I'm a military vet, and I have PTSD and anxiety, as well as a pretty bad case of depression that I'm currently in my 3rd year of. I read that cognitive behavioral therapy can massively improve PTSD symptoms, and in turn help to reduce anxiety. So I've been trying various techniques at home. The problem there is, my wife and I live in a small 2-bedroom ground floor flat with an upstairs neighbor with absolutely no concept of other people. A jock douchebag type who's a personal trainer, but he trains at home too, 'cause gains. The kind of guy whose only 2 topics of conversation are protein powder and steamed rice. I'm willing to bet you know the type. Anyway, with that being a constant issue at home, meditation and quiet mindfulness are just not possible with the constant noise. My solution to this was to do my normal routine during the day, but take full advantage of my insomnia later on. Around midnight of each night, I would put on my coat and shoes, and as we lived near the beach, I figured I could walk to the beach now that there's pretty much no people around. Walk on the sand and be mindful to the sounds of the ocean. Actually, sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? It was the first 2 times, but you know what they say, 3rd time's the charm. The walk to the beach from my home isn't that far, maybe a little over half a mile. But once I got there, I would walk to the very end of the beach until you reach the cliffs where there's this World War II artillery gun turret, which was another half-mile-ish away. Sometimes I would walk the path up the cliff to the gun and stare out into the blackness of the midnight ocean, which was only ever broken by the occasional flash of light from the lighthouse. I would sit and listen to the waves crashing against the cliffs. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and just concentrate on nothing but that sound. I felt safe up there, knowing that I was alone, just me and the waters. Usually before I'd turn tail and head home, I would walk down to a small row of benches. They're all marked with plaques in remembrance of someone who also came and enjoyed the view, although I imagine they came during the day. The benches are close to an old pub that was shut down years ago, and I had heard the place used to get used as a dogging site or a brothel or something like that back in the day. So when I saw vehicle headlights coming towards the pub, I figured it was just some young lads trying to catch potential doggers at it. I sat on the beach and waited for the car to pass me, but as it rounded a bend in the road further up, I was momentarily lit up by the headlamps. The headlights of the vehicle went off immediately, and the car went off-road and out of sight for a moment. At this point, I was fully alert and a wee bit cautious, so I dropped to one knee and ducked behind the bench, the one that I'd been sitting on. The vehicle drove past me. It was only maybe 40 feet away, and as the lighthouse illuminated the vehicle, I could now see that it was this old beat-up Land Rover kind of vehicle, one with shitty camo painting on the sides. At that moment, someone popped out of the top of the vehicle with a scoped rifle and a giant torch. In that instant, in my head I was back in Iraq, and my senses felt razor sharp. I dropped onto my belt buckle and crawled into a patch of long grass adjacent to the benches. Then I got in a position where I could see them, but they wouldn't be able to see me. The guy with the rifle shone his torch at the exact bench I'd been sitting on. Then the others, clearly searching for me. He started looking all around him through the scope, looking for where I might have gone. My heart was pounding so hard I felt as if they would be able to hear it. I held my sleeve over my mouth to muffle the sound of my breathing, but more importantly, to try and hide the condensation of my breath. The vehicle started to move to get a better view of the benches, so I started slowly crawling towards the main road, as not only is there a row of houses, but an old stone bus stop I could take hard cover behind if they saw me and decided to open fire. After about 5 minutes of hiding in the long grass, It started to rain, and they were still obviously looking for me, but were now about 150 feet away. The guy with the rifle was scanning around with his eye down the scope, so I waited till he was looking away from me to seize my moment and run for cover. I pushed my hands hard into the wet dirt to launch myself onto my feet. Then I sprinted towards the bus stop, while throwing some zigs and zags in there just in case they had seen me. Luckily, they hadn't, and I was now far enough away that I could take out my phone and call the authorities. They were there with a riot van and a squad car in about 10 minutes, and as I was talking to the officers in the van, they spotted the gunner's vehicle and then took off after them. The officers in the squad car stayed behind to talk to me. The rain was coming down in sheets by now. They asked me if I was absolutely sure it was a rifle, and I told them yes, no doubt. The officers both looked at each other, and then one of them asked, "And what's exactly your experience with firearms?" I told them I was ex-Army and have seen my fair share of all kinds of firearms. They then asked me what I was doing there after midnight, which was a pretty fair question to be honest. I explained that, quite ironically, I was taking a mindfulness walk to ease my PTSD symptoms. They were satisfied with that explanation, if not somewhat amused, and told me that the armed response unit was en route. I asked if they needed me to stay behind and make a statement, but the officers told me not to bother waiting around because they most likely wouldn't need to take a statement beyond the call I made. And also, it was pissing down with rain, so I should just get home and get dry. It was over, but I still felt super weird, and my heart was still thumping hard inside my chest. I started to walk home, and when I was about halfway there, a police helicopter buzzed overhead and settled over the area where I'd been sitting on the benches, with the searchlight going. It was right then that it hit me like a shotgun to the chest. That happened. That all was fucking real, and it was here. What the My head started swimming. My heart was pounding twice as hard now, and my legs felt like jelly. My lungs felt glitchy, like I couldn't properly breathe. I dropped to my knees, now crying in the street under pouring rain, the only light coming from a nearby street lamp with a flickering bulb. And there I was, gasping for breath, with all sorts of thoughts flashing in my head, thinking that if I had stayed still and I hadn't hunched behind the bench, if I had done any number of things differently or hadn't, then I could have gurgled my last breath alone in the dark in that cold, wet dirt, and my wife would be none the wiser till the following day. I have no idea if they were even there for me, and if they were, how could they know I'd have been there? I'd been there twice before, I suppose, but is that something that one could bank on? And it's not like there's animals to hunt out there beyond foxes. And even that raises the question of why hunt foxes from a vehicle with a rifle and a flashlight at midnight? Anyway, I'm not ashamed to say that that experience absolutely terrified me. I guess my Army training helped me stay alert and to stay hidden, but I don't really know. I don't go on my midnight mindfulness walks anymore, and I still get the occasional nightmare about the whole thing. Update. So today, I made a call to the local PD to try and get an update on what had happened. After a quick description of what the initial incident was, the officer on the phone was able to find the incident report nearly right away. Basically, the first officers on the scene confirmed that they had seen the vehicle and they had gone off-road in pursuit. They said they had given chase over difficult terrain for as long as they were able to. Then the vehicle turned off all their lights and made an escape using the darkest cover. The armed response units were called in as a precaution and patrolled the entire area while the helicopter was dispatched in order to try and locate the vehicle with heat-sensing cameras. Both teams were unsuccessful in finding them, as by the time they had arrived on scene, the bad guys had gotten away. CCTV was also checked, but yielded absolutely nothing. I told her I was sorry if they felt that I had wasted their time, and that I guess I had overreacted on account of my PTSD. She told me that as far as they're concerned, I did the right thing. She also said that there have been a few isolated accounts of gunshots having been heard in the area over the last few years, so maybe rethink taking my walks so late at night. I didn't have the energy to explain why I used to wait until it was so late to go walking, but any advice about avoiding getting shot is good advice in my book. So instead, I just agreed with her and then ended the call. After I'd hung up, I just sat for a few minutes going over the whole thing in my head. I guess that it was most likely nothing when all is said and done, but if nothing else, it's taught me that being hypervigilant isn't always such a bad thing.